A devoted mother with a bright future in show business.
She was very much a rising star.
She was loved by a lot of people.
Is viciously attacked in her own home.
She had put up a fight.
She struggled very hard, trying to live.
I was beyond shocked that this could happen to such an amazing human. I mean, why?
Police single out several suspects.
The boyfriend began to wash his hands before police arrived on the scene.
A bitter divorce, custody battles, money, these are all motives for murder.
We appreciate you coming and talking to us, man, but we got some problems.
What's the truth? What happened?
Just when detectives think they have the killer in sight.
Well, you need to start complaining while your cell phone and her cell phone too. I don't know. All right.
The investigation takes a jaw-dropping turn.
And it was a murder from a Hollywood movie.
So it was definitely bizarre.
It was just unexpected.
Only a twisted person could pull something like this off.
Is the vibrant heart and soul of country music. In complete contrast, just a few miles away, is the suburban calm of Hermitage.
Hermitage is about 20-30 minutes outside of town, and it was a quiet place.
It doesn't have the hustle and bustle of downtown Nashville. It's an upscale, nice area to live in that didn't really have that much crime.
That all changes one quiet Sunday afternoon.
I was working that afternoon when the call came in.
The victim's boyfriend found her deceased and called 911.
When I'd walked inside the residence, I found the victim dead inside the living room area. There was blood next to her, and it appeared she had several gunshot wounds.
When I looked at the victim's body, I noticed multiple bullet holes, multiple projectile strikes. I also noticed powder burns on one of her hands.
There was gunshot residue on her hands, which would indicate she attempted to grab the gun.
The curtains had been pulled down, and some chairs had been moved around, like a struggle had started. It appeared she had put up a fight with the suspect. We began looking for a murder weapon. We could not find one.
We realized that the assailant picked up shell casings and removed them from the scene to make it harder on investigators to determine what happened. We were lucky. We found one shell casing that rolled to the edge of the wall, and it was sort of hidden, so the suspect wasn't able to find that one. It had a green sheen, and I thought it was an old brass shell casing that was corroded. We turned it over for the test.
We knew upon locating that shell casing that we were now going to have a clue that we could follow up on.
We noticed there was money on the counter, and there was other valuables, jewelry, a ring, so it didn't appear that robbery was a motive.
Investigators follow a trail of evidence from outside the house.
The victim's vehicle was parked in the garage. The vehicle's door was open, and it appeared that items from her purse were strewn across the floor of the garage.
It appeared that she was targeted, followed to her residence, and the suspect took the most opportune time to gain entry once the garage was opened, and she pulled in.
Detectives want more information from the victim's boyfriend. He tells police his girlfriend is 39-year-old Veronica Boza. They had plans to go out that day.
He stated when he arrived at the residence, the back garage was up. He noticed the victim's vehicle was parked. The door was open.
Upon entering the residence, he found the victim deceased.
Obviously, he's a suspect for us. He was the one that found the victim, and the red flags are up for us as detectives.
But Brian's too overwhelmed to say much more.
We can't rule him out because we don't know the history and don't know what happened.
We knew we were going to have to conduct an interview with the boyfriend later on.
Veronica was originally from Milan, Italy. Veronica was very religious. She was Catholic. I think her faith is what led her to be so sweet and kind and help others. She was just a beam of light, happy, happy, happy.
Veronica had a lot of energy. And of course, she was from Italy. So she had this accent, and everybody from here was like, wow, where are you from?
At 23, Veronica moved to the U.S. to pursue her dream of working in the entertainment industry as a TV producer.
When I first met Veronica, she was entry level in the production industry. She took to it really well.
Veronica was very much a rising star. You just wanted to work with her.
She would boss you around and you'd like it. She'd tell you what to do and you'd be like, okay,
But work wasn't the center of Veronica's life. Her loved ones were.
Veronica had a lot of friends. She was loved by a lot of people and respected.
In 1994, Veronica got married, and 7 years later, she welcomed a son.
I think Veronica was very happy. She wanted her family, her son, her husband. It was the whole thing. Veronica's son was the end all for her. Like, she would walk through fire for him.
After 15 years of marriage, Veronica and her husband Tim separated, but they were successfully co-parenting their 8-year-old son. Officers confirmed the boy was with his father during the time of the murder. As news of Veronica's death sinks in, her loved ones struggle with the loss.
I was beyond shocked that this could happen to such an amazing human. I mean, why? Why? That's really what I sit with. Why?
To hear this news was like a punch in the gut. I was stunned.
At the crime scene, investigators make a startling discovery. Veronica was a victim of a random mugging and robbery just months before her murder.
We noticed a letter from the state saying the subject that was arrested for robbing her was going to be released on parole.
The person was armed and took property from her, and ultimately the suspect was arrested in the robbery and Veronica prosecuted.
Was the attacker out of jail the day Veronica was murdered?
This was definitely an angle we had to look into and to see his whereabouts and if he had ever made any statements toward Veronica after he had been arrested.
This definitely was a motive that could be related to the homicide.
Coming up, an old friend with a troubling past draws suspicion.
We found out that he had a large number of physical assaults against women.
Then investigators uncover a web of deceit
This was significant because it showed that he was lying about where he was.
that leads to a killer hiding in plain sight.
We then noticed that his phone was in the general area of the crime scene.
She admitted that she stole her ex-husband's handgun.
It's like, what?
After finding TV producer and loving mother Veronica Boza gunned down in her living room, detectives are trying to establish if a criminal from her past has taken his revenge.
We definitely had to look into seeing if he was out to harm Veronica. We started to do a background investigation on him. He was a dangerous person.
But when investigators dig deeper, they are forced to reassess.
We were able to find records showing that he was in jail during the day of the murder.
With a key suspect eliminated, detectives now focus on reconstructing their victim's final hours.
We found out that Veronica attended St. Edward's Church, and that's where she dropped her son off with his father after church service that Sunday before she was murdered.
Her boyfriend. Brian had spoken with Veronica right after she had left church.
She also spoke to a coworker during her drive.
We were able to learn when her last call was made, and then from Brian's when the 911 call was made.
From this information, detectives pieced together a timeline. Veronica was alive at 12:08 and dead by 12:20.
So there was a 12-minute span that we were able to narrow down of when this murder took place.
Due to the very limited time frame that the homicide could have occurred, the suspect would have been definitely rushed for time to perpetrate the act.
With Brian arriving just moments after Veronica's death, police question how he could have missed spotting her assailant.
So we needed to speak with her boyfriend. We had to interview him and exclude him as a suspect, if possible, or keep him as a suspect.
Brian agrees to go down to the station for further questioning.
You could visibly see he was upset.
Detectives begin by asking about Brian and Veronica's relationship.
Brian was also a TV producer, and they worked on a show together, and then that's how they met.
They had just started dating 2 to 3 months earlier, and they were getting ready to go on a weekend trip.
I've never been loved the way that she loves me. Never felt so strongly about a relationship. We moved very quickly and hadn't fought our hearts on it.
Though Brian appears to be the grieving boyfriend, they still do not have evidence to eliminate him as a suspect.
Did you see her at all today?
No. So
When was the last time you saw her?
Sundays are usually when we reunite.
He stated that he talked to Veronica after she dropped off her son near the church, and they were talking about a short trip they were going to take. He left a friend's house, and he was heading to Veronica's house. Along the way, he stopped and purchased a cold drink at a market, and then spoke with Veronica on the phone, and then he pulled up to the residence.
I walked in, looked to the right, saw her on the ground. I screamed for her name, and then went over to her. I saw the state she was in. I believe she was still alive up until a few moments before I walked in the door.
When police ask how Brian knew Veronica was dead, his answer is troubling.
At first, the boyfriend didn't check the victim to see if she was breathing or if she was now deceased.
When Brian called 911, the 911 operator asked him, "Is she breathing?" Only then did Brian check for a pulse, and he didn't find a pulse.
And then he began to wash his hands before police arrived on the scene.
He didn't perform any type of medical assistance to Veronica. It would seem odd.
Did you hurt Veronica today? Did you have?
No. And she's the love of my life. We plan to spend the rest of our life together.
Brian insists he had nothing to do with Veronica's death. He's then very quick to offer up another suspect.
Had she had any disagreements with anybody that you know of?
Tempos.
As we were interviewing Brian, he brought up the soon-to-be ex-husband as a person that we might want to look at as being involved in the homicide.
Brian had stated that Veronica and Tim were going through a rough divorce.
He said the divorce was contentious between Tim and Veronica, and he knew there was issues relating to the custody of their son.
Brian tells the detectives that he and Veronica were worried that Tim was capable of terrible things.
I've been very cautious for the past 6 months. I've been keeping an eye out to see if there was anybody there. I always felt like maybe he was the kind of guy who was going to have somebody there, like surveillance or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That raised red flags and piqued our interest. A bitter divorce, custody battles, money, these are all motives for murder. We wanted to interview him. Obviously, Tim, he was a suspect to us at this time due to his relationship with Veronica.
Police investigating the homicide of TV producer Veronica Boza are interrogating her boyfriend, Brian Robinson.
I was freaking out. Just like, oh my God.
He points the finger at Veronica's soon-to-be ex-husband, Tim Boza.
We found out that the divorce was within a few weeks to a month of being finalized, and that the divorce was going to be favorable to Veronica.
Brian tells police Tim isn't happy about the settlement or the custody arrangement.
When Veronica refused to submit to him to just being a split, he then attempted to tarnish her as a mother.
With nothing to tie him to the murder, Brian is released. Officers are dispatched to check his alibi, while detectives look into Tim Boza.
We found out that he was a home remodeler and worked for himself, basically.
Investigators learn that Tim and Veronica's marriage became strained in the last year and a half.
We found that Tim had hit a rough patch in his work. Some of his houses weren't selling. He was starting to have money issues.
Her life was taking off and going a really good direction, and Mr. Boza's life was doing the exact opposite.
12 months before the murder, Veronica filed for divorce.
The reason they had started the divorce was the financial situation Tim had put the family in with this business.
His business was basically going down the tubes.
He fought with Veronica over money. There was sort of an issue between Veronica and Tim as far as custody, and Tim was worried Veronica was going to take their son out of the country.
Would Tim kill his wife to keep from losing his son?
We went to Tim's house to notify him of Veronica's death. He didn't seem very upset, didn't seem very shaken.
Tim did start to show emotion when he started talking about how to make notification to his son that his mother had passed. Tim told us his son went to his sister's house. Tim called his sister. He told her what happened to Veronica, and he again became upset at the thought of having to tell his son what happened to his mother.
Police asked Tim to come down to the station for an interview where they question him about his wife's personal life.
Tell me about this boyfriend of hers. You doing the shows and you're putting in 14, 16, 20 hours a day? You start hanging out. She just started acting weird. And then I started paying attention more. She fessed up. I said, okay. Tried therapy for a little while. Didn't work. I moved out June 6th.
Tim stated that he was upset that they were going through a divorce and that it wasn't what he wanted.
Had Veronica's relationship with another man driven Tim to kill?
Has your relationship with your wife ever been volatile? No. Was there ever any problems in the divorce? Our thing was good. Do you have any insurance that you're going to claim from this accident happening? I don't know. I have no idea. If I'm the beneficiary, then sure.
The life insurance policy on Veronica was approximately $550,000.
Tim admitted that once they were divorced, Tim would be taken off the life insurance as a beneficiary. So he was 2 to 3 weeks out from being on the life insurance policy.
Detective Crumby cuts to the chase.
Did you have anything to do with your wife's murder? Oh, sure.
When asked if he had done it, Tim reacted calm, cool.
Part of my technique in interviewing people, I like to make accusations and statements to try to throw them off.
I'm sitting there calling you a murderer. I think you are. I don't know how to respond to that. I didn't do it.
He came back at me and was adamant that he didn't.
Tim says the last time he saw Veronica was in the church parking lot at the custody exchange.
He gave us the exact route that he followed after he picked up his son and the different stops that he made.
Tim had said that he had gone to a hardware store and a grocery store near his residence. He provided receipts.
We had other detectives follow up, actually go to the store, pull surveillance tapes.
When police get a hold of the security footage, they're stunned.
The receipts that Tim had given us match up the times on the surveillance video. And we had already had a time frame of when the homicide happened, so we were able to narrow it down to where he was. Tim was not there at the residence when it happened.
Tim is cleared as a suspect, and officers have also looked into the boyfriend Brian's alibi.
Brian went to a local store for a cold drink before he came to Veronica's house. Surveillance tapes showed him at the store at the time he stated, so we knew where he was during the time we suspect the homicide happened.
Investigators are back at square one.
We don't have a known suspect. I started getting frustrated.
You know, anytime you have a homicide of this magnitude, community members, neighbors, friends are obviously worried.
Everybody was just really shocked and tried to comfort each other and try to understand what happened.
Why the hell did this happen? How did this happen? Who did it? I wanted justice for her. You know, I mean, no matter who did it, no matter what it was, I wanted answers.
Officers canvass Veronica's neighbors, asking if they saw or heard anything unusual around the time of the murder.
A neighbor stated they saw a light-colored white or silver SUV or van in the alley right before the homicide. They didn't know if it was involved or not. They stated that it was gone before the police arrived.
Did the driver have something to do with Veronica's murder? Is this the lead police have been hoping for?
We started to have some pieces to the puzzle, but at this point, we didn't have the puzzle, and we didn't even have the border.
2 days after Veronica Boza's murder, police still don't have a solid suspect. Their only lead is a light-colored SUV that was seen in the alley by Veronica's house right before she was attacked.
We tried to narrow down whose vehicle that possibly could have been. We were told that maybe a handyman that comes around, so we followed up and determined that he had a dark truck.
With few leads, investigators looked to Veronica's autopsy results for insight.
The medical examiner said that she was shot 4 times. She had a defensive wound to her arm. The last time was a shot to her head to make sure that she was dead, so she was basically executed.
Well, is this a stalker? Is this a hitman? What is it? And so everybody was on alert.
While the murder weapon wasn't found at the scene, police do get one piece of good news.
Technicians ran ballistic tests on the shell casings, and that gave us a type of gun we were looking for. It was fired from a high-point 9mm.
Investigators decide to track Veronica's phone for further clues.
When we have a homicide, we like to collect electronic evidence. We knew from family and friends that she had an iPhone, so we had our tech investigator follow up on cell phone records and GPS records.
We were able to see that she'd gone to church and then came back home, and then now that phone is missing.
Police believe Veronica's attacker took her phone.
The location of the cell phone was being recorded, leaving the scene of the homicide, traveling down the roads, down the interstate.
Was the signal leading police straight to Veronica's killer?
That was one key piece that really opened our eyes. It was almost as if Veronica was helping us in our investigation.
But then the signal goes dead.
So we thought that the phone had been destroyed, powered off, or just the battery died. We requested records for her current boyfriend, Brian. We determined that he was telling us the truth about where he had been, what he had been doing.
We looked at the cell phone records and the GPS locations for Tim in relation to the homicide. His cell phone was hitting on towers along the path that he stated he took.
But something else about Tim's phone records jumps out to detectives.
We noticed multiple calls to one number before and after the custody exchange.
Police learn the number belongs to Corey Cotham.
Corey Cotham was a friend of Tim's. They worked together, they hung out together, and they were very close. He was friends with Veronica, and at some point actually stayed with Tim and Veronica.
Were the calls just routine conversations between two friends, or something more sinister?
Tim had told us that he spoke with his friend Corey, but he just made it seem like it was just a matter of the fact, not a long conversation. But this was definitely a red flag to us.
But when police look closer at Corey, they find Tim and Veronica's good friend has a dark and troubling past.
We found out that he had a large number of assaults, physical assaults against women.
Corey Cotham preyed on women. He was always playing women and trying to get money. He had such a high opinion of himself. He called himself Big Man.
It's a major revelation. Was it possible Corey had something to do with Veronica's death?
Maybe there was a personal reason between him and Veronica that we didn't know about that could have been related to the homicide. We were just unsure at this point.
We then got a warrant issued for Corey's cell phone data to show what Corey had been up to that day.
The results raise immediate suspicions.
Corey's phone and Veronica's phone were both hitting in the same general area as each other. We noticed that the day of the homicide, he was in the general area of St. Edward Catholic Church, which is where Veronica went to Mass at that morning. We then noticed that his phone was in the general area of the crime scene later that morning.
When detectives track his phone's movement after the killing, they make a stunning discovery.
We noticed that Corey Cotham's device was in the area of the crime scene, then heads back out towards Interstate 40.
The route is suspiciously similar to the path Veronica's cell phone took.
We would conclude that the two devices are in close proximity to each other and that there's a good probability that the phone was taken by the suspect at that point.
Upon learning that information, we now started looking at Corey Cotham as a suspect in the murder of Veronica Boza.
Investigators come up with a plan to lure Corey into talking.
I was very nonchalant with him. Tried to play it as we needed his help to clear his buddy Tim.
Corey agrees to meet with detectives.
He didn't think our radar was up in regards to him.
Corey confirms he spoke with Tim the morning of the murder.
It was a couple of times. I know I called, but I know I called on the way back into Nashville.
He stated he was coming back from Kentucky from seeing one of his girls, and that at the time he spoke with Tim, he was passing the Portland area on the interstate.
Where were you when you talked to him at 12:20? I was already back in town. I went over one of my girls' house and just chilled with her, you know.
He went to a girlfriend's house in Nashville, which was on the other side of town from where the homicide occurred. So he put himself way away from the homicide location.
This was significant because it showed that he was lying about where he was.
Then, investigators decide to set a trap.
One thing we had to do was put Corey's phone on his person and in his hand 100% of the time.
Is that the best way to get a hold of you, by your phone? Yeah. You always have it on you? Always. Okay. You're like me, man, 24/7. Hey, I got the car charger, the whole deal.
We were able to get Corey to admit that he always had his cell phone with him and that nobody else had the phone that day.
And that's almost as good as putting a weapon in Corey's hand.
All right, man. We appreciate you coming and talking to us, man, but we got some problems. What's wrong? We've already pulled cell phone records, all right? And what you told us is totally not what your cell phone records show.
He got fired up. He was pretty upset, pretty mad.
After Veronica Boza is found shot to death, police have caught her old friend Corey Cotham in a lie.
Well, you need to start explaining why your cell phone and her cell phone too. I don't know. All right. I'm telling you, man, I ain't got nothing to do with this. I ain't got anything to do with that. I knew Veronica before I knew Tim. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's what's crazy, dude. I came because I'm trying to bail my boy out from getting some mess.
He started to get angry, started getting frustrated.
You want a lawyer before you talk to us, or you want to talk? There's nothing I can tell y'all. I haven't done anything.
At that point, we needed his vehicle and his cell phone in relation to the investigation, and we went and obtained a search warrant for them.
When police seize Corey's vehicle, they notice striking details.
Corey had a champagne-colored Cadillac Escalade. A neighbor saw a light-colored vehicle in the alley that day of the homicide. We found a collapsible lunchbox. We found gloves and clothing, shoes, and other items that we didn't really know how they related to the scene.
If Corey is Veronica's killer, what's his motive?
Corey is definitely a dangerous person. You don't know what he's capable of.
He was a sociopath.
But with no hard evidence against him, police have to let Corey go.
Releasing him at that point was frustrating. Obviously, Corey was a top suspect at the time, but we needed to do further investigation. And
one of the things that we did with Corey's records is we looked at everybody he talked to the day of the homicide.
one of the numbers that stuck out was around 12:28 in the afternoon. So I called the number, and the person on the other end of the phone stated he used to live across from Corey.
He had stated that he had cleaned a gun for Corey a couple weeks prior.
It was a Hi-Point 9mm. Corey came to him and pulled it out of a red collapsible lunch pail. And we found a red collapsible lunch pail in the trunk of Corey's Escalade. So it started to come together at that point.
Investigators need to find the gun and connect it to Corey, but they still have a long way to go. With phone records placing him near Veronica's house at the time of her murder, police confront Corey's only alibi, his girlfriend, Jenny.
During that interview, Jenny had told us that Corey had been with her that day from 12 to 12:30 because she fixes him lunch at that time.
It's the same time Veronica was murdered. I showed her Corey's phone records and told her we knew she was lying.
Detective Crummy and myself fully explained to Jenny that lying during a murder investigation, she could go to jail.
At that point, she backed off. She actually walked away from us, and she called her attorney. I didn't know her motive for lying. I didn't know if she was scared of Corey. I didn't know if she was involved in the homicide and complicit. So we had a lot of other investigation to do and a lot more digging.
Detectives still need a witness to place Corey at the scene of the murder.
We showed multiple neighbors an array of photographs of different vehicles, and one was an Escalade. They couldn't make a positive identification on what type of vehicle it was, so ultimately we couldn't use it.
It's another roadblock for police and more frustration for Veronica's family and friends.
It makes you mad that somebody would do something like that to somebody like her.
It felt twisted. It was like we couldn't get answers. We were getting all these rumors. What's the truth? What is the truth? What happened?
Investigators need a break, and they finally get one.
Jenny, Corey's girlfriend, was starting to contact the police department multiple times and wanting to speak with detectives in relation to the case.
So when we interviewed Jenny the second time, she decided to tell us what really happened.
Not sure what time he was at my house. He was at my house Sunday. I can't be certain of the time.
Now she couldn't provide an alibi for Corey. She did state she saw him that morning, but she was half asleep. When she awoke up later in the afternoon, Corey was now at her house after the time of when the murder happened.
You didn't go with him? You didn't take him?
No. I did not leave my house.
Jenny does make one startling admission that's very valuable to police.
She admitted that she stole her ex-husband's handgun and put it inside a red collapsible lunchbox and hid it in her vehicle.
Whenever I thought I could get arrested for it, I was going to try to sneak it back. Whenever I went to go sneak the gun back, it was missing. And the only person that knew was Corey.
It's a major discovery. Not only is Corey's alibi shattered, police now have a lead on the possible murder weapon.
We showed Jenny a picture of the red collapsible lunchbox we found in Corey's vehicle, and she identified that as being the one that she put her handgun in after she stole it from her ex-husband. She agreed at that point to work with us to prove that she wasn't involved in the homicide.
When detectives get the results from the analysis on Corey's phone, they sense they're on the right track.
They were able to recover a picture of a Hi-Point 9mm handgun.
It's the same type of gun that was used to kill Veronica.
The one shell casing we were able to locate on the scene had a greenish tint to it. After looking at Corey's phone, the ammunition in the picture also had a greenish tint to it.
This was possibly the gun that was used in the homicide. We didn't know if Jenny gave it to Corey. Corey stole it, we didn't know. So we dug through the police reports relating to her and her ex-husband, and it just says that a handgun was stolen.
When police contact Jenny's ex, he confirms that the gun in the photo is his.
He stated it was the Hi-Point 9mm that was stolen.
Was this the actual gun used in Veronica's murder?
Our main motive was to find ballistics that affirmatively tie the handgun that was stolen as the handgun used in the homicide to kill Veronica.
Jenny's ex also tells police he used to shoot his gun on his property.
We searched everywhere trying to find evidence, any shell casings that could have matched. As we were about to wrap up our search, our ID tech actually found one shell casing and he dug a couple more. I knew it could be a very critical turning point in the investigation if it did match.
3 hours later, detectives received the ballistics report.
It's a match. Definitely was fired from the same handgun. It was the best thing we could have done and could have to tie the handgun to the scene without actually having the handgun.
But where is the gun that was used to kill Veronica? Before investigators can lay any charges against Corey, they get an urgent call from Jenny.
She told the police Corey had planned a trip to Barbados. He was going to leave the country.
Told detectives he's about to flee the country. They need to act fast before he slips through their fingers.
We contacted Jenny again and asked her to come in and do a controlled phone call.
I asked Jenny to wear a wire to see if Corey would talk about what had happened, and also to try to get him to come back to Tennessee where we could arrest him.
Jenny is nervous, but agrees to help police.
Hey, what's wrong? Hey, they're coming to arrest me, Corey. What do I do?
She stated that the police were coming after her, that we had a warrant for her.
They got some sort of bullet, and it matches the same thing, exact match as one that they found at the crime scene.
She stated that the detectives were able to tie the handgun that she had from her ex-husband to him, or to the homicide. She said, Corey, they know.
They're saying it's a 9mm. They can get 9mm bullets anywhere. That don't matter. That's stupid.
That was an aha moment because we never released to him or anybody else the caliber of weapon that was used.
So we were very confident in all the evidence from Cotham, which was just overwhelming that he was the killer.
But it's what Corey says next that blows investigators away.
Get in touch with him. Let him know what's going on.
Mr. Cotham did make a statement, you need to check with Tim and get with Tim.
For him to tell Jenny to call Tim, that let us know right then and there that Tim was involved in the homicide.
It's a surprising twist. Had Tim been involved in Veronica's death after all?
Surveillance was started on Tim that afternoon.
Mr. Boza had a big motive. He had custody issues in his marriage. We had money problems.
Tim had financial gains from the death of Veronica Boza.
$550,000 in insurance, which would have turned his life around.
While Tim had motive to kill Veronica, he didn't pull the trigger. But would he have recruited the couple's mutual friend to do his dirty work? Police take Corey into custody. Then they close in on Tim.
Officers were able to follow Tim around, and then once the warrants were obtained, Tim was arrested during a traffic stop.
Corey refuses to speak to police, but Tim is eager to talk. He tells detectives a tale so twisted, they can hardly believe it.
I'm sorry, I lied to everybody here. There was a movie years ago. They both had terrible wives, mothers, or whatever, and they said, what does this crisscross thing? And just in jest, I said, okay, hey, we should do the same thing.
It was a very crazy plan.
This homicide didn't make sense to me and how it played out. It was just unexpected.
It was definitely bizarre when he told us what the plan was.
Corey was supposed to murder Veronica, and Tim was supposed to murder one of Corey's girlfriend's ex-husband. The two of them got this idea from a Hollywood movie with the same type of plot.
The crisscross killing theory was strange. Of course, Boza claimed he thought they were joking, but I could see that Mr. Cotham really talking it up and acting like Mr. Big Man or Mr. Hitman that they could pull this off.
The day she's murdered, he calls you and says it's done.
Yes, sir, he did.
What did he say?
He just said that he went in the house and she tried to run, and that he shot her.
When I talked to him, it said that Corey said it's done, which was obviously dynamite evidence for us.
Police learned Corey also had something more to gain from Veronica's death.
Tim promised to pay Corey $35,000 of the life insurance policy.
His wife was leaving him, and he just had anger and jealousy issues of the victim. He was a desperate man, and he had the strongest motive of anybody.
Corey Cotham and Tim Boza are tried separately for their roles in Veronica's murder. In court, prosecutors put forward a theory of how the crime unfolded.
The morning of the homicide, Corey went down to St. Edward Catholic Church.
The only person that could have told Corey Cotham where she was going to be that day was Mr. Boza.
While Tim runs errands to build his alibi, Corey follows Veronica home.
Veronica opens the garage door. She pulls in to park. Corey pulled right in behind her, got out of his vehicle. He was wearing a mask and gloves, and Veronica was in her vehicle and saw this. She runs into the house. Corey's chasing after her. I believe they fight in the kitchen area and in the living room area.
She fought for her life. She obviously struggled very hard to try to live.
Corey and Tim are both found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
Mr. Cotham got life without parole. Mr. Boza got a life sentence, which means he'll have to serve 51 years before he's eligible for parole.
Veronica was definitely an unexpected target. I can't fathom Tim would ever do something like this. He hired the hitman. He's just evil. Only a twisted person could pull something like this off. He has no soul.
The truth behind what happened, it just makes you feel sick to your stomach.
In losing Veronica, we lost one of the most amazing human beings that ever walked this earth. Miss her all the time. It's painful.
A woman enjoying retirement after a lifetime of hard work.
My mother did very well for herself. She was a very strong-willed woman.
Nina was quirky. I can't tell you how much she loved frogs and Elvis Presley and country music. She just marched to her own drum and did her thing.
Found brutally murdered in her home.
He stabbed her 24 times. There was blood throughout the house. It's like living in a bad horror movie.
A dangerous predator eludes police.
She had been sexually assaulted.
Our victim potentially knew who the suspect was.
I kept asking them, is this going to be a cold case? And they kept telling me, we're not done yet.
DNA evidence leads to a shocking realization.
It was a match to another murder.
The thought that we had a serial killer here in town scared the hell out of me.
And a suspect no one saw coming.
To call this an unexpected killer is an understatement.
That's like every person's nightmare.
It hit me like a ton of bricks.
Kansas City is a large metropolitan area on the border between Kansas and Missouri.
Kansas City can be a very fun place to be. We love our sports in this city. It's a very friendly place to live.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary on October 29th, 2010, until Kansas City police receive a 911 call about a woman found unresponsive in her home.
A woman called police and said she discovered her mother at the bottom of the basement stairs, and she checked her for vital signs and found she was dead.
When the first officer arrives on the scene, the caller leads them to her 75-year-old mother, Nina Whitney.
I showed them my mother's body laying at the bottom of the stairs. I told the police officers I believe she had just dropped over from a heart attack. And then I called my cousin Kim.
The phone rang and I picked it up, and Paige told me my mother is dead. Paige said she thought maybe Aunt Nina fell down the stairs going to the garage.
While Paige speaks with her cousin on the phone, police take a closer look at Nina's body.
Nina was face down, and there was a shelving unit there with a bunch of glass frogs, and a lot of those frogs had fallen off the shelf on top of her. It initially looks like an accident and a natural death, but when they rolled the victim over, they discovered several stab wounds in her chest. And also what were determined were defensive wounds on her hands, which is something that we see when someone fights back.
Clearly, this is no accident, and detectives arrive to begin a homicide investigation.
When someone's stabbed like the victim was, it usually means there's some sort of emotion tied there because you're actually stabbing someone instead of just shooting them or something like that. Her blouse had been pulled up and there were buttons missing, and they quickly discovered that they're what they believed to be saliva on her breast, which they swabbed. So it felt like this was sort of a sexual in nature homicide.
Police inform Paige that her mother has been murdered.
I don't think I've ever been that stunned in my entire life. It's just, it's so surreal. It's like living in a bad horror movie. I don't know how to describe it. You're just totally and completely stunned.
A lifelong native of the Midwest, Nina Whitney was a woman with humble roots.
My mother was born in South Dakota, and then their family wound up here in Kansas City in the late 40s, early 50s. My mother had a very rough life. My mom's mom left their family, so my mom was left to take care of her younger siblings. She married my father, and my parents divorced when I was about 9 years old. My father left her pretty much destitute, so it was just the two of us. And we struggled tremendously. My mother worked some very hard jobs, and we lived on food stamps.
Eventually, Nina found a stable, well-paying career.
She worked on the assembly line at General Motors here in Kansas City. She managed to buy a house, and she did very well for herself. She was a very strong-willed woman.
Nina wanted a better life for her daughter and encouraged Paige to get an education.
I went into criminal justice at Central Missouri State University, and I was a probation parole officer for 25 years. The older I became, the closer my mother and I became. We spent a tremendous amount of time together. My mother started collecting frogs back in the mid-70s. Ceramic, glass, dishes, clothes, bedding, towels. The entire house was filled, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, with frogs.
Nina's favorite hobby earned her the nickname, the Frog Lady.
Nina was quirky. I can't tell you how much she loved frogs and Elvis Presley and country music. She just marched to her own drum and did her thing.
Investigators are stunned that someone would viciously attack this 75-year-old woman in her home.
I was in total shock, truly. She was in her house, minding her own business, not doing anything wrong. Like, how on earth did that happen?
When I found out Nina had been killed, I couldn't imagine who could have done this. I had no ideas.
Detectives interview Paige to narrow down when the murder might have taken place.
Friday, at about 6:45, I decided to call my mother to see what time she wanted to go shopping on Saturday. And that's when she didn't answer the phone. It was extremely unusual for her not to answer the phone. So then I called the cell phone, and she didn't answer that either. Then I started to panic. So then I took off and went out south toward her house. And when I got to her house, the porch light was not on, and I knew something was very wrong. So I walked through to the kitchen, and it was dark. So I turned the light on, and there was her body laying at the bottom of the stairs. And I could feel the back of her head, and her head was ice cold. And I called 911, and then it just kind of hit me out of the blue that I was hearing weird noises. So I followed the noise upstairs to the hall bathroom. Both faucets in the tub were running full blast. And I thought, well, that's just really strange, because my mother didn't use that bathroom.
Detectives wonder if Nina's killer had turned on the faucets, and if so, why?
The victim's daughter had located the guest bathroom bathtub faucets running, and she had turned those faucets off. So the bathroom was processed for fingerprints and DNA.
In the victim's bedroom, there was like an imprint of where it looked like somebody had been laying on the comforter.
And near the bed, we could see buttons that appeared to be similar to the victim's blouse, as well as a hair roller that was similar to the hair rollers in the victim's hair. So that led us to believe that the victim was assaulted and maybe her blouse may have been torn open at that location.
As every corner of the house is searched for evidence, investigators make a crucial discovery.
We opened up the knife drawer in the kitchen and located a paring knife where the blade was bent and there was blood at the base of the blade near the handle. That could mean that somebody had tried to wipe it clean.
Forensics bagged the knife for further analysis and processed the house with luminol, which can indicate the presence of blood.
The luminol tells us that somebody was moving around in that house with some amount of blood on them. We got that blue glow in the victim's bedroom, bathroom, hallway, living room, and the kitchen.
The front door was unlocked, and we didn't find any sign of forced entry, which was a big clue for us that our victim potentially knew who the suspect was.
There's no reason for anyone to hurt her. And my mother was not a very social person at all. She had no family other than me here in town that would be in and out of the house.
Page points to one detail detectives could not have determined from their search.
There was a shelf by the front door where her cell phone always was, so she could take it when she went out the front door, and it was missing.
Had the killer snatched Nina's cell phone? Police request a trace on it, while officers go door to door looking for witnesses.
One of my other detectives found a party down the street that had seen a white male in the neighborhood earlier that day. He was in his 50s, walking with a limp. The witness saw him go to a black Jeep. He saw that car was parked kind of behind the house, about a block away. And so he sees this guy walking and kind of looking around. And so he just kind of mentally noted it. He kind of looked like he was probably up to no good.
Could the suspicious man be Nina Whitney's killer? As they start to track him down, detectives catch a break.
We found that Nina's phone was still on and still being used in South Kansas City. We were able to do surveillance and observe a person using our victim's cell phone.
Coming up, a break in the case reveals a potential serial killer.
We had another homicide.
There were zip ties that have been used for bindings.
He terrorized an entire community.
And a grieving daughter takes matters into her own hands.
I did feel a need to help them investigate my mother's homicide.
If she didn't get the answers, then she kept asking.
Detectives investigating the vicious stabbing of 75-year-old Nina Whitney believe the killer stole her cell phone. Now, police have traced the phone to an address in South Kansas City and rush to apprehend the suspect.
We did kick his door in, and when we took the suspect into custody, we found that he had the phone on his person.
The suspect goes by the nickname Lil Mickey. Police demand to know how he came into possession of a murdered woman's cell phone.
He told us he was walking down the street pretty close to our victim's house and found that phone laying in the grass. He said he didn't make the most money in the world and was just glad to have a cell phone that was working and started using the cell phone.
Skeptical of his story, investigators ask him if he killed Nina Whitney.
Little Mickey adamantly denied being involved in any sort of violence with our victim or anything where someone was harmed or killed. We asked him, could you have bought this phone off somebody else? Did you get it from a person?
Despite hours of questioning, Lil Mickey stands by his story.
His story was, I found the phone there in the grass and picked it up.
Police want to know his whereabouts at the time of the murder.
Based on her lights being off in the house, we believe Nina's murder happened during daylight hours. And he did provide an alibi, a female that he had been with that day.
Investigators have no grounds to detain Lil Mickey any longer, but they obtain a sample of his DNA just in case.
He wouldn't seem like he would have a motive to commit this type of crime, but we still had to do our due diligence.
The next day, police tracked down the woman he used as his alibi.
So we talked to her. The information she was able to provide, it matched up with what he had been saying.
With Lil Mickey looking unlikely as the killer, detectives turn back to the theory that Nina knew her attacker.
It was obvious that she had let someone in the house because there was absolutely no forced entry.
We had to look at Nina's history and try to figure out who she would have let into the house. And we also had the witness that had seen a white male in the neighborhood. My supervisor thought that a composite sketch would be a good thing to pursue in this case. The witness willingly came down to police headquarters and met with our sketch artist. She sat with him and gave a pretty good-looking composite sketch of what he believed the party looked like that he saw that day. We showed Paige that picture, and she looked at it for a long time, but didn't necessarily jog her memory about who it could possibly be.
The individual did not look familiar to me at all. I could not for the life of me think of anyone who fit that description.
Investigators can't be certain if the man seen by Nina's neighbor is the killer. But with few quality leads, police decide to release the sketch to the media.
I was the publisher and editor of the Cass County Democrat-Missourian. We all know that police sketches are an unexact science. However, I think they can be very useful. So we had run the sketch in the newspaper to put that sketch out to a larger audience.
As the sketch goes public, detectives work with Paige to come up with a list of people that Nina would have had a reason to let into her home.
She'd had quite a bit of work done on the house in the last year or so, so there had been lots of people in and out working on the house.
Maybe someone that is a predator did work inside her house and decided that she would be a good victim. Paige went back into Nina's home and went through all of her records to show us dates and times when she had stuff done at her house.
The detectives got all that information from me and questioned everyone who had been in and out of that house.
My squad started working to collect DNA from anyone that we thought had contact with Nina. And I think we collected about 40 to 50 samples. Honestly, most people were willing to provide their DNA to us when we explained that this was an elderly woman that was brutally murdered. If there was someone that maybe we thought was fishy or involved or could potentially be the suspect, DNA is good to rule people out in cases like this.
The forensics lab will compare the scores of samples to the DNA recovered from Nina's body.
It'd be nice as a detective to get DNA results like they do on TV, 5 seconds later, but it was about a month after the homicide when we got our results back. My boss called me and she said that we had a DNA hit. So I thought that, well, if there's a DNA hit, then we'll be able to find a suspect. But that wasn't the case because it was unknown DNA.
The DNA does not match the dozens of samples collected by homicide investigators.
Everything from the mailman to Little Mickey to contractors that had been inside her house. It rules them out, absolutely. But the DNA profile that was found was a match to another murder almost 2 years to the day in Harrisonville, Missouri. So we knew at that point that this was not the first time that this suspect did this. And that wasn't something I expected. It was a big deal. What concerned us was that we did have a serial killer type situation.
1 month after the murder of Nina Whitney, DNA taken from the crime scene as matched to another homicide in the national database.
It was a match to another unsolved murder in Harrisonville, Missouri. It's a smaller town about an hour south of Kansas City. Kara Jo Roberts was found inside her home in the bathtub, shot in the head with the bathtub running, just like Nina. It seemed like a sexually motivated homicide, and with the tub running, that matches Nina at our scene.
Police decide to keep this explosive new information under wraps.
At that point, we were trying to keep this information close to the chest because the suspect didn't know that we knew both crime scenes were connected. We did not want that in the public.
Detectives even withhold this new development from the victim's loved ones, including Paige.
I kept asking them, when is this going to be a cold case? And they kept telling me, well, not yet. We're not done yet. And I don't know what they were doing, but I know they were doing things behind the scenes.
Investigators head to Harrisonville to get briefed on the Kara Jo Roberts case.
Just reading through a case file doesn't give you the whole story. So to talk to an investigator that actually worked that case, it helps paint a better picture of what happened in the other investigation.
I was one of the detectives from Kansas City at the time that was sent to work on this case. Kara Jo and her husband lived right there in the small town. They had a kid. Seemed like a very happy relationship. Just your normal, happy family.
The Roberts family was devastated by a horrific tragedy on November 5th, 2008.
Her husband found Kara in the bathroom. She wasn't wearing any clothes. There were obvious gunshot injuries. She was in the bathtub, and the bathtub was running. There were zip ties that we speculated at the time had been used for bindings.
At the Kara Jo Roberts scene, we found 2 different white-colored zip ties that appear to have been used but cut. We also found a roll of duct tape. On both the zip ties and the duct tape, we had male DNA.
There was DNA found on Kara's body, and there was indications given by the medical examiner that she had been sexually assaulted.
Detectives investigating Nina's murder ask for a rundown of the suspects in Kara Jo's case.
Based on the fact of no forced entry, very much kind of angled towards us believing that the husband may have had something to do with this. A domestic violence type homicide is usually spur of the moment, rage and kind of action, but this could have been a situation where he was trying to control her physically with the bindings, and then it escalated.
Kara Jo's husband claimed he found his wife dead when he got home from work and immediately called 911.
From the time she was last seen to the time when her husband came home and found her was a very tight window. It was only like 45 minutes. Her husband gave what was kind of a complex alibi, but when we went to talk to his friends who were involved in that alibi, they were able to corroborate everything.
DNA testing at the time also cleared Kara Jo's husband, and no other viable suspects were identified. The investigation went cold until the DNA connection to Nina Whitney's murder revives the case 2 years later.
Nina's homicide was a lifeline to the Kara Jo Roberts case. We have double information, and we have a bigger picture of what's going on in both of these acts.
What we have to do at that point is start doing what's called victimology. You basically have to understand the circle of Kara Jo's world, and you look at the circle of Nina's world. You know these 2 cases are linked, and you want to find those commonalities in between.
What was really interesting was all the stuff in the Kara Jo Roberts case that matched up to Nina's case. As far as the tub running, we had a lot of different theories, but our main one was if our suspect was going to commit a rape, they would want to use that tub to wash away evidence after the act. In Nina's case, he turns on the water to try to maybe get her body up into the bathtub. He may have not been able to drag her body up those stairs. Our witness down the street sees this guy walking with a limp, and we thought the limp may have hindered him from getting her body back up to the tub. So just like our case, the Kara Jo Roberts case had someone down the street that saw someone in the neighborhood.
The witness had seen a Jeep, had seen a male going to the Jeep, and that male may have been limping.
And it looked like they were up to no good.
Despite the telling parallels, police can't find anyone connected to both Nina and Kara Jo.
That was not the answer that we wanted as detectives, because that meant that it was somebody totally random. A random person coming in and taking their life. That's like every person's nightmare.
In a case like this, where you know there's a suspect out there that could do this again, it makes it even more urgent to try to catch the person. So you're grasping at straws, looking for any leads, any information, any help you can get to try to solve a case like this.
You can only work with what information you've got coming in, and there wasn't any new information coming in at that point.
Running out of options, detectives turn to the one person who might be able to connect the 2 victims.
Detective Blank called me, and he said, "Paige, I have something to tell you." And what he told me was more horrifying than my mother's homicide. That scared the hell out of me.
Nina Whitney have informed her daughter Paige about a stunning development.
Detective Blank told me that there was a DNA match from the saliva they found on my mother's shirt to DNA that they found on Kara Roberts in Harrisonville. Kara had been raped, put in the bathtub, and then shot in the back of the head. The thought that we had a serial killer here in town is enough to cause panic for every female in this city.
We provided information from both crime scenes to Paige. And that's not something we would normally tell our victim's daughter. But in this case, Paige was a probation and parole officer. She is savvy in law enforcement, so we thought we could trust her with that information. We wanted to see if anything in her memory would be jogged to try to figure out if there's any common people, common locations that both victims would have known or gone to.
At the time, I thought it had to be someone who targeted my mother specifically. But when they showed me the evidence in Kara's case, there's just a million things to think about when you're trying to come up with a profile for someone like that.
There wasn't much there that seemed to be connected between the two victims. There wasn't an aha moment in that meeting at all.
It's been 5 months since the murder of Nina Whitney, and investigators are desperate for a break. They turn back to the composite sketch of the man with the limp seen close to Nina's house.
I wasn't necessarily a believer in the composite sketch thing. People make their own determination on whether they think the information they have is valuable to a case. They see that sketch and they decide, well, this guy's got glasses and the guy I know doesn't have glasses. And so the danger in that is that that person may have information, but that person may be turned off by the sketch.
We had run the sketch in the newspaper, but really that sketch hadn't brought in a lot of leads.
Despite their reservations, police hope that more people will see the sketch on billboards around the city, and someone will identify the suspect.
They were able to put that picture along 71 Highway, along with our tips hotline. The number of tips that we received on this case based on that sketch were not as numerous as you would think. All of them have to be followed up on, because there could be something there that you're going to miss if you don't take those tips seriously.
Weeks pass as investigators chase down leads that go nowhere. The lack of progress takes a heavy toll on Nina's family.
I was really angry that she died in her own home in that terror and that panic, helpless and alone and fighting for her life.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I think about my mother's last few minutes of life. I know the neighbor was home next door and nobody heard my mother screaming. I wake up to the sound of her screaming 2, 3 o'clock every morning. It doesn't go away. It does not go away.
There's nothing worse than having to tell a family member, I'm sorry, there's no new information coming in, because they're frustrated. They're of the mindset that, why aren't you out there doing something?
At her wit's end, Paige summons the strength she learned from Nina growing up and takes it upon herself to search for the killer.
The investigation was not moving fast enough to make me happy, so I did feel a need to help them investigate my mother's homicide. I drove around the city and went to every antique shop, every flea market, every thrift store I could think of where she liked to shop.
She was looking for that white male walking with a limp and that black Jeep. And Paige was seeing black Jeeps like that everywhere.
I would take pictures of all the cars that looked like black Jeeps and all the license plates on those vehicles and forwarded all of those to the detectives.
Paige made it her job to be involved, and if she didn't get the answers, then she kept asking.
I can't even explain to you how badly I needed to know who murdered my mother.
Despite Paige's efforts, 6 months after her mother's death, the investigation starts to go cold.
Those kind of unsolved cases in Kansas City leave an entire metro area on edge. As the days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, how do you keep that case alive within the pages of your newspaper? Most of our weekly papers did not include an update because there was nothing to update in the case.
I kept thinking, this is going to be a cold case. I'm never going to figure it out. I'm never going to figure it out.
You always hope for them to get information to catch a suspect quickly, but I just couldn't fathom who would have done it. I had no suspects in mind.
I drove around and took pictures of the billboards because I wanted to make sure I got pictures of them before they had taken them down. But the sketch concerned me because I don't know if that description was accurate. I thought there's just so many questions that I will never have answers to.
Suddenly, 1 month later, Paige has a realization.
May 26, 2011, I was driving down 71 Highway in rush hour traffic, and I just happened to glance up and look at the lower half of the billboard, and I swear to you, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like lightning had come out of the sky and hit me in the head. It literally all fell into place as I'm driving down the highway.
Her daughter Paige has just been struck by a mind-blowing realization.
I was driving down 71 Highway, and I just happened to glance up at the billboard. Prior to that, when they showed me the sketch, the individual did not look familiar to me at all. I just focused on the lower half of his face and the chin, and it just an epiphany. It was Jeff. Jeff Moreland was a boyfriend that I had for 3 years while we were in college. We met in 1983 at Central Missouri State University, had a relationship for 3 years. Jeff and I met in a criminal justice class. He was as sweet and charming and funny as he could possibly be, and I truly fell head over heels in love with him. Once I got my graduate degree, I became a social worker, and Jeff went on to become a police officer. He loved being a police officer. That was his ideal dream job.
Paige and Jeff broke up after 3 years of dating, much to her mother's dismay.
My mother absolutely adored him. For years after we dated, my mother told me she wished I had married him. I know if he showed up on the doorstep, she would happily let him in the house.
Could Paige's ex-boyfriend from 2 decades prior really be the sadistic serial killer detectives have been hunting for?
I was so lost in my own head, trying to tell myself that Jeff didn't do it. I kept trying to tell myself that I was wrong, but in my gut, I just knew that was him. At the parole office, I'd mentioned it to a couple of the girls that I work with, and they told me that I should run him through the system. I said, well, that makes sense. So I ran Jeff through the system. And lo and behold, if he didn't have a black Jeep Wrangler registered in his name, and I nearly lost my cookies. And I also found out Jeff had been a police officer in the Grandview Police Department, but Jeff had retired about 5 years prior to my mother's homicide because he'd had Parkinson's.
Does the Parkinson's diagnosis mean Paige's ex could be the man with a limp spotted near Nina's home? Paige brings her findings to detectives.
I told him that Jeff had been a police officer in Grandview and gave him all the information that I had.
Officers look up Jeff Moreland's home address and discover he lives in the same small town as the first murder victim, Kara Jo Roberts.
He lived in Harrisonville, Missouri. So that was the first person during our investigation that matched all of those factors.
Detective Blank said, yep, it could be him.
Detectives know they have to take extra care when investigating an ex-cop.
Harrisonville is a very small community, and Detective Blank told me that Jeff knew every law enforcement officer in the county, and that he would find out that he was under investigation.
Investigators decide a direct approach is the best option.
We did not believe that we had probable cause at that point to get a search warrant to get his DNA. So we went down and knocked on his front door. I did tell him, your name's come up in a homicide, and we need to get a DNA sample from you. If someone were to tell me that, I'd be like, what homicide are you talking about? That was not Mr. Moreland's reaction. He said, well, I've got to go take my cat to the vet, and he went back inside his house. My gut was telling me that we had our guy, but you need to be sure that this is your guy before you go with your gut.
Police again asked Jeff to provide a voluntary DNA sample.
I ended up calling him and telling him again that, hey, we need your DNA to compare to this homicide, and then we'll be done.
Jeff again claims that he's too busy to provide a sample. A week later, investigators receive an unexpected phone call from the police department Jeff retired from, located just outside Kansas City.
So the sergeant with Grandview Police Department calls us and says that he's been in contact with Jeff Moreland and he provided him a DNA sample. We rushed down there and we made contact with the sergeant. On his desk, he had a pill bottle.
The sergeant provides a strange account of how he obtained Jeff's DNA.
Jeff told him that, I want you to meet me at this gas station along 71 Highway. And Jeff shows up in his black Jeep. And Jeff tells him that Kansas City has come and accused him of being involved in a murder. As he's explaining the story, he takes swabs and puts them in his mouth. And then Jeff hands him this bottle along with my card and says, here, give this to the detectives. We tell the sergeant, that sample's not gonna work. You can't just provide your own sample. And the sergeant sort of indicated, well, we'll just get rid of it in the trash then. We told him, no, we'll take that bottle off his hands and take that from him.
The evidentiary value of this stuff is just worthless. But obviously, we recover it and we examine it.
That DNA was tested, and it did not match our homicide.
The fact that that DNA came back as not a match just didn't surprise me at all. Had he followed the protocol, that would have exonerated him. And he very easily could have done that, but he chose not to.
We more and more really thought that we might have had our suspect based on his actions at that point. We all know about serial killers. I was worried that the suspect was going to do this act again.
A few days later, detectives get the call they've been dreading.
I received a phone call. There was a rape that occurred in Harrisonville. But the victim was able to get away, and then she was able to contact police. The victim took the officers to where this event had occurred the day before. It was Jeff Moreland's residence. So my first question is, where's Moreland at now?
When police go to arrest Jeff, he's nowhere to be found.
Detective Blank told me Jeff may have raped a third victim, and he is now on the run. I didn't know if he would be after me. I didn't know if maybe he had figured out that it was me who initially contacted the police. That was a nightmare.
Tragically, a third woman has now been attacked, but Jeff has disappeared, and investigators fear he may strike again.
When I heard that he had taken off, I was worried about Paige.
The detectives told me they truly did not know where he had gone or what he knew. I told Detective Blank he would probably find Jeff in Iowa near his family.
As Paige predicted, a trace on Jeff's cell phone leads police to a motel in Iowa.
He had taken a bunch of over-the-counter sleeping pills. He tried to take his own life and then ended up in a hospital in Des Moines.
Jeff survives the suicide attempt, and he is taken into custody by local police.
We headed up there to Iowa to get Mr. Moreland's DNA. We drove all the way back from Iowa with it. We wanted to be sure he wasn't going to get out of custody or bond out or whatever. And then the next morning, we got the DNA results back. We told Paige that his DNA matched both crime scenes. Jeff is, in fact, involved in the murders of Kara Jo and Nina.
It just blows my mind. And it was beyond all comprehension to me. This was 2010 when he murdered my mother. And Jeff and I split up in 1987. I had no idea what Jeff would become. The last time I actually saw Jeff was in 1994. He told me then that he periodically would patrol up and down my mother's street just to make sure that everything was okay. And at the time I thought, oh, that's so sweet. But now looking back on it, I just don't know.
Jeff Moreland is charged with the murders of Kara Jo Roberts and Nina Whitney and the sexual assault of the third victim. Soon after laying charges, investigators learn about the source of Jeff's phony DNA.
We were contacted by Jeff Moreland's ex-wife, and Jeff Moreland had a daughter with this ex-wife, and that daughter was engaged to someone. And that guy said that Jeff had called him out of the blue, and Jeff told him that he needed a sample of his DNA for a paternity test because someone was accusing Jeff of being the father of a kid. And so he provided a DNA sample and gave it to Jeff Moreland.
Then, Jeff tricked the Grandview police sergeant with some sleight of hand.
So the sergeant provided us a formal statement where he said he wasn't able to see Moreland's hands at all times when Moreland was taking a sample of his DNA.
Jeff's attempted deception backfires, only giving prosecutors more evidence against him.
There's nothing for the defense to attack. There's nothing to be argued because the physical evidence was just overwhelming.
I think it also says a lot that Jeffrey Moreland had 0 witnesses in his defense at the trial.
He got life without parole plus 50 years consecutive on Kara Roberts' homicide. And then he got 10 years for armed criminal action and 20 years for murder second on my mother's case to run concurrent.
With no trial testimony from Jeff, police and the victims' families are left to piece together exactly what happened to Nina Whitney and Kara Jo Roberts.
What we do know is that Jeff Moreland took Kara Jo's life. My personal opinion is he was driving by and saw her in the yard, and he was in that mode where he was hunting and decided that's his target.
After killing Kara Jo, it seems Jeff developed a taste for murder. He struck again 2 years later.
I believe the day that Nina was murdered, Jeff Moreland simply knocked on the door and Nina saw who it was and let him in the house. It's not necessarily uncommon for a predator to go after older women because they feel like they are easier victims.
Of course, my mother would let him in. And then at some point, he had to have started forcing her backwards up the stairs. I think when he got her into her bedroom, then he tried to rip her shirt off of her, forced her onto the bed, but she did fight back. She did run. My mother went running down the stairs. He chased her. He stabbed her 24 times. The kill shot was here through the throat.
At some point, he turns on the water to try to maybe get her body up into the bathtub to wash off his DNA.
But at that point, he knew with his Parkinson's acting up that there was no way he was going to be able to take her body back up 2 flights of stairs and put her in a bathtub. And then he went upstairs to clean the knife off, put the knife in the kitchen drawer, and went out through the sliding glass door.
Investigators believe that before he left, Moreland stole Nina's cell phone to throw police off his trail.
He has the presence of mind to grab that phone and throw that phone in the grass a quarter mile away from Nina's house. He knows that the investigator is going to be caught up in that phone as sort of a way to lead us away from him.
I did not know for 8 months who murdered my mother. The 8 months that I spent not knowing made me insane.
When you have families that do their investigations, sometimes it's not the best. But Paige being involved was actually good in this case because she was actually the person that found Jeff Moreland.
I can't even explain to you how grateful I am. Between my mother's neighbor and the sketch artist, I would have never figured it out. Never would have figured it out if it hadn't been for the 2 of them.
To call this an unexpected killer is almost an understatement. Jeff Moreland terrorized an entire community.
Police speculate that Jeff's forced retirement a few years before the murders may have been the catalyst that set him on the path to kill.
I feel that when he developed Parkinson's and he had his power taken away from him as a police officer, the murders were almost like him getting revenge on the world.
I joined this organization called Parents of Murdered Children and Other Survivors of Homicide Victims. And we're all basically going through the same thing. So it does help to have someone who understands the enormity of what has happened.
In 1998, Pope John Paul II appealed for pardon of an American convicted murderer.
He is appealing directly to the conscience of the people who are entrusted with this kind of authority, to decide on the outcome of a sentence of the death penalty to a person.
But Texas officials ignored pleas for clemency from the Pope.
The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay.
Who was this notorious convicted murderer? Why did the Pope try to save this criminal? In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most controversial figures in the death penalty debate. Now, let's get into it. It was a quiet Monday morning on June 13, 1983, when Gregory Scott Traver began to feel uneasy. His co-worker, Jerry Dean, was late, something completely out of character. They had planned to work on an alarm installation together. Frustrated, Gregory headed to Jerry's apartment to check on his friend. When he arrived, Gregory noticed the front door was slightly ajar. He called out his friend, but no one answered. Cautiously, he pushed the door open wider and stepped in. The living room was in disarray, tools, motorcycle parts, and some clothes scattered on the floor. Gregory knew Jerry would never leave his things like this. The television and stereo had been oddly stacked together near the entrance, as if ready to be moved. More alarmingly, Harley Davidson, the motorcycle Jerry had spent countless hours working on, was nowhere to be seen. Gregory made his way further into the apartment. As he neared the spare bedroom, he smelled a strange metallic scent, like rust or blood. Heart pounding, he pushed the door open. Lying on the floor near the bed was Jerry, his body twisted unnaturally, his face partially hidden by a pool of blood. His lifeless eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, frozen in time. The sight sent Gregory reeling, but his eyes were drawn to something even more horrific. On the bed, there was another figure, a woman Gregory didn't recognize. Her body was motionless, and from her chest protruded a pickaxe, deep into her flesh. Blood stained the sheets around her. Shocked and scared, Gregory ran back to his own apartment and called the Houston police. "I found my friend. He's been murdered. There's blood everywhere. There's a woman, too." When the police arrived, they were met with a harrowing tableau. The disarray of the apartment suggested a violent struggle, or perhaps a hurried search. In the spare bedroom, both victims were savagely attacked. An officer carefully extracted the pickaxe from the woman's chest. Bagging it as crucial evidence, they began to meticulously document the scene. The bodies were respectfully removed and transported to the Harris County Medical Examiner's office for autopsies, which they hoped would yield vital clues. Investigators sat across from a visibly shaken Gregory Scott Traver, probing for every detail of his gruesome discovery. Gregory told them about the missing items. The Harley Davidson and a blue Chevrolet El Camino pickup truck were all gone. A careful search of the apartment deepened the mystery. Both victims' wallets had vanished. A ball-peen hammer from Jerry's toolbox was used during the attack. To the investigators, the scene screamed of a robbery gone horrifically wrong. Yet, something didn't add up. There were no signs of forced entry. The perpetrator either was invited in or exploited an unlocked door. As detectives canvassed the area, several neighbors came forward and admitted they heard loud noises from Jerry's apartment in the early morning hours. It sounded like banging, maybe furniture being moved. But none called the police. "We didn't hear any screams or gunshots. Figured it was just a late-night argument or party." The investigators couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a burglary. The sheer brutality suggested a crazy level of rage and personal vendetta. It was intentional. autopsy reports confirmed their darkest suspicions. Jerry had been stabbed 20 times with a pickaxe. He also suffered a severe blunt force injury to the back of his skull, likely from the ball-peen hammer. The female victim had endured 15 stab wounds. The final, fatal blow was directly into her heart. Fingerprints identified her as 32-year-old Deborah Ruth Thornton.
Guy's on the phone saying, my dad's on the phone saying, hey, you need to come over to the shop. I'm like, what's up? He says, your sister's been murdered. I'm like, no, Sure enough, she was. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they'd kill my sister.
With the victims' identities confirmed, investigators knew it was time to delve deeper into their lives. The ferocity of the overkill suggested that this was no random act of violence. Jerry Lynn Dean was born in May 1956 in Smith County, Texas, and grew up with a deep love for mechanics. From a young age, he was fascinated with how things worked, spending his time fixing bicycles, cars, and later, motorcycles. His passion for machinery led him to a career in mechanical work, and his most prized possession was a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Jerry's personality was as magnetic as his mechanical skills. Standing 5 feet 7 inches and weighing around 150 pounds, Jerry wasn't physically imposing, but he had a strong presence and an undeniable charisma. His friends described him as a fun-loving guy who had a deep loyalty to those he cared about. In 1974, at the age of 18, Jerry enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard. After his service, Jerry returned to Texas, working at a cable company. In February 1983, Jerry married Shawn Dean, but the marriage quickly fell apart, leading to their separation just a few months later. Despite the failed relationship, Jerry remained focused on his work in his Harley-Davidson, throwing himself into projects to move on. On the night of June 12, 1983, a few hours before the murders, Jerry met Deborah at a lively pool party. Aside from that fateful encounter, the two were practically strangers. Friends who attended the gathering recalled Deborah arriving alone, eager to blow off steam. However, Deborah was married and had 2 children. The spotlight quickly turned to Deborah's husband, Richard Thornton. They knocked on his door, asked about Deborah but did not tell him she was murdered. Later that day, when watching the news, Richard saw her truck on the crime scene and realized the hard truth.
I thought I saw Debbie's truck. The plates were personalized plates, and they said Debbie, D-E-B-B-Y.
Jealousy was a potential motive that investigators considered, as Deborah had spent the night with a man she just met. So, Richard was summoned for questioning. He admitted to having a heated argument with Deborah that day. We fought, and I told her to leave and not come back that night. But despite our issues, I loved her. I would never hurt her. When investigators mentioned Jerry, Richard shook his head. I had no idea she was seeing someone else. His alibi, that he was home with their children that night, was thoroughly checked and verified. Neighbors corroborated his story, and phone records showed he was at his residence during time of the murders. With Richard eliminated as a suspect, the case took a puzzling turn. If not a jealous husband, then who? Investigators turned their attention to another figure in Deborah's life, her own father, William List. As they dug into William's background, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Once convicted of assaulting young boys, he had served his sentence and managed to rebuild his life as a wealthy business owner in Texas. But his past was far from buried. He was currently under federal investigation for tax evasion. The investigation took a serious turn when police learned that Deborah was subpoenaed to testify against her own father, William. He might have a motive to silence her. During the interrogation, William adamantly denied any involvement, asserting that he loved his daughter. However, with no solid evidence, detectives were forced to release him. Another team of investigators delved into Jerry's past. Surprisingly, Jerry had more than his fair share of rivals and disgruntled acquaintances. As detectives interviewed those who knew him, one name kept surfacing like a dark omen: Carla Faye Tucker. At 23 years old, Carla Faye Tucker was a fixture in Houston's vibrant party scene, a free spirit known for her wild ways and magnetic charisma. She was the best friend of Jerry's ex-wife, Shawn Dean. It turned out Carla was the reason why Shawn divorced Jerry. 1 year ago, Shawn and Carla were living together. Shawn quickly found a boyfriend, Jerry, and introduced him to Carla. From the moment they met, Carla and Jerry clashed like oil and water. Carla perceived Jerry as weak and unworthy of her friend. One evening, Carla returned home to find Jerry's Harley-Davidson motorcycle in the middle of the living room. Oil leaked from the bike, seeped into the carpet and ruined it. Furious at the blatant disrespect, Carla chased Jerry out of the apartment, her rage echoing through the halls. In the months that followed, the hostility only grew. When Carla and Shawn planned a road trip to follow their favorite bands, Jerry's jealousy flared. He discovered the girl's photo album and stabbed every picture of Carla he could find, including the only existing photograph of Carla with her mother. This wasn't just vandalism, it was a deeply personal attack. Incensed beyond measure, Carla swore she would teach Jerry a lesson. She implored Shawn to leave him, warning that he was toxic and dangerous. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Instead, Jerry and Shawn moved in together and married in February 1983. Despite the rift, Carla and Shawn maintained their friendship. But the tension was palpable. A month after the wedding, Shawn visited Carla's new house to retrieve a jacket. Jerry hated Carla, so he decided to wait outside. But Carla saw him, she got furious and confronted him. According to witness accounts, the confrontation turned violent. Carla punched Jerry square in the face, shattering his glasses. The blow was so severe that shards of glass became embedded in his eye, necessitating an emergency trip to the hospital. 4 months later, Shawn claimed Jerry had abused her, so she filed for divorce. In a daring act of revenge, Shawn stole Jerry's bank card and withdrew his entire savings of $460. She and Carla Faye Tucker spent the money with rebellious glee. But Jerry was plotting vengeance of his own. Rumors swirled that he had hired a man for $300 to shoot Carla in the face, not to kill her, but to burn her face with a flare gun. When Carla learned of this alleged plot, her fury was incandescent. The already volatile relationship between her and Jerry had escalated into a dangerous game of retaliation. Intrigued and determined, investigators delved deeper into the lives of these notorious party girls. Carla was born on November 18, 1959, in Houston, Texas, the youngest of 3 daughters. Her parents, Larry and Carolyn Tucker, had a tumultuous marriage that was marred by instability and substance abuse. Carla's childhood was far from ordinary, characterized by violence, drug addiction, and neglect. From a young age, Carla was exposed to things no child should ever experience. She described herself as being very close to her mother, Carolyn, but Carolyn had a severe drug problem that would shape the path Carla followed. By the time Carla was 8 years old, Carla's sisters, Kathy and Carrie, taught her to smoke cigarettes and marijuana when most children were still learning to read and write. At age 10, Carla's world was turned upside down when her parents divorced. During the proceedings, she discovered that Larry Tucker was not her biological father. Carla was the result of an affair her mother had years before. The trauma of this discovery, combined with the lack of parental supervision, pushed Carla deeper into a life of addiction and delinquency. By age 12, she was regularly using heroin and engaging in relationships with older men. The next year, she dropped out of school completely. Her academic failure and isolation from any form of structure pushed her further into Houston's underground drug and party scene. Carla became a groupie for several prominent rock bands in the 1970s, including the Allman Brothers Band and the Eagles. Like her mother and sisters, she became a sex worker to fund her escalating drug habit. Carla frequently got into physical fights, sometimes beating other girls and even adults, once leaving a girl with 2 black eyes. Her life of chaos only continued to spiral downward when, at age 16, Carla married Stephen Griffith, a mechanic she met during one wild night. Their marriage was just as volatile as the rest of her life, marked by frequent fights, drug use, and instability. They quickly got divorced. At 20 years old, Carla faced a devastating loss, the death of her mother. Grief-stricken and searching for solace, Carla once again found herself drifting back into the world of biker clubs. It was during this dark period that she struck up a close friendship with Sean Dean. Carla and Sean became inseparable, their connection strengthening through their shared grief and mutual love of the party scene. But when Sean began dating Jerry Dean, cracks began to form. Carla despised Jerry from the start. Their interactions were always laced with tension. During this time, Carla also met Danny Garrett, a 35-year-old bartender and Vietnam veteran who suffered severe PTSD. Interestingly, Danny was friends with both Jerry and Sean. The four often partied together, living recklessly, indulging in drugs, alcohol, and a life that skirted the edge of the law. Yet despite the festive atmosphere, Carla and Jerry's hatred deepened. They could never get along, and their feud was becoming a dangerous undercurrent in their tight-knit group. Investigators, having done their homework on Carla's background, brought her in for questioning. Sitting across from them, Carla was calm, almost indifferent. She admitted her tension with Jerry but denied any involvement in the brutal murders. She willingly provided her fingerprints and was about to take a polygraph test when her boyfriend, Danny, advised her against it. So, she backed out. The fingerprint results proved a dead end. No usable prints were recovered from the crime scene or the murder weapon. Without hard evidence, Carla was released. Weeks passed, and the case seemed to stall. Just when it appeared the trail was growing cold, a homicide detective named J.C. Mosier took an unexpected interest in the case.
It was really unbelievable. It was I'd never seen anything that terrible, and I worked at Homicide Division about 7-8 years and saw a lot of evil things being done, but never anything quite like this.
Though he hadn't been officially assigned to it, Mosier's curiosity was piqued when he heard Danny Garrett's name. It turned out Mosier had grown up in the same neighborhood as Danny Garrett and his family.
He said he was a friend of yours. I said, yeah, Danny Garrett, hell, he's my bartender. He's a real good friend of mine. Yeah, a real good guy.
Wild child is the best way to describe Carla. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks that Danny Garrett would be hanging around people like this, a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds, and a bunch of dope fiends, and prostitutes, and I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Mosier had a personal connection to the case that others didn't. He was a close friend of Danny's family and especially his ex-wife. So, Mosier called her, probing Danny's possible involvement with Karla Faye Tucker and the Pickaxe murders. On the other end of the line, Danny's ex-wife admitted she hadn't heard anything directly, but she promised Mosier she would discreetly ask around. It was a long shot, but Mosier's instincts told him not to let it go. Mosier also knew Danny's brother, Douglas "Doug" Garrett.
And I knew his brother. I knew his brother Doug. Doug was an ex-motorcycle bandito biker.
Mosier informed Doug about the murders and even offered security for anyone coming forward with useful information. Doug said he would try to talk to his brother. On July 18, 1983, an emergency call came into the Houston Police Department. The caller was crying and scared to death. He insisted on speaking with Detective Mosier directly. It was Doug. He had changed his mind. Doug had known for weeks that his brother and Karla were the killers because they came to his place right after the murders and boasted about it. But he stayed silent out of fear and loyalty to his family. However, when Karla planned to silence potential witnesses and cover up the crime, Doug knew he couldn't keep quiet any longer. He agreed to come down to the station, even offering another witness, Carrie Burrell, Karla's own sister. When Doug and Carrie arrived at the police station, investigators wasted no time interviewing them separately to ensure their stories aligned. Doug didn't hold back. He explained that Karla's hatred for Jerry Dean was no secret. On the day of murder, at around 6 a.m., Danny and Karla showed up at Doug's house in Jerry's stolen truck. Karla, high on adrenaline and gloating, boasted about how she had killed Jerry Dean and an unidentified woman. With chilling pride, she described the murders in gruesome detail. Danny, standing beside her, nodded in agreement, backing up her every word. Doug was horrified, but eventually gave in to their demands. He burned Jerry's wallet in an ashtray and helped disposing the stolen motorcycle parts. Doug then dropped another bombshell. There was a third man named James Librant. He had accompanied Danny and Karla to Jerry Dean's house the night of the murders. In the adjacent interview room, Carrie Burrell shared her story. She had moved in with Doug Garrett 2 weeks after the murders, terrified of her sister, Karla Faye Tucker. The gruesome details of the Pickaxe killings deeply disturbed Carrie, and she feared that staying near Karla could put her own life in danger. Desperate to escape her sister's violent grip, Carrie had fled.
Something inside me, as close as we were, told me that she had done something very horrible, very horrendous.
But that wasn't the most chilling part. Carrie told investigators that Karla and Danny had developed a terrifying bloodlust after the murders. Their next target was Carrie's ex-husband, Ronnie Burrell. Karla saw Ronnie as a loose end, someone who knew too much about the double murder. Ronnie had to be eliminated. After 2 hours of tense conversation, Doug Garrett agreed to lead investigators to the spot where he had dumped the stolen motorcycle parts. But Detective Mosier wasn't finished. He had one more request, a bold move to trap Karla and Danny once and for all. Mosier asked Doug if he would help them get a confession. Doug, fearing for his life, immediately agreed.
I asked that very question. Are you sure you want to do this to Danny? He said, JC, they will come kill us now.
The plan was now in motion, but no one was prepared for the chilling details that would soon spill from the mouths of the suspected killers. On the afternoon of July 20th, 1983, the trap was set. Investigators outfitted Doug with a transmitter taped to his chest and a hidden recorder tucked into his boot. With the wire in place, Doug mounted his motorcycle and rode toward Carla's house, knowing he was about to confront the demons that had haunted him for weeks. Just a block away, Mosier and a team of investigators waited in a van, listening intently to the live feed, ready to act at a moment's notice. When Doug arrived, he played it cool, exchanging small talk with Carla and Danny Garrett. Carefully, he steered the conversation toward the murders, subtly coaxing them to relive that horrific night. What followed was a bone-chilling revelation. With eerie nonchalance, Carla and Danny began to paint a vivid picture of the night they murdered Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton. On the weekend of June 11, 1983, Carla Faye Tucker hosted a wild birthday party for her sister Carrie. What began as a celebration quickly spiraled into a drug and alcohol-fueled marathon, with friends coming and going, the revelry continuing for days. By Sunday night, only 3 people remained awake: Carla, her boyfriend Danny Garrett, and their friend James Librand. And in that haze, an idea struck Carla like lightning. She asked Doug to steal Jerry Dean's prized Harley-Davidson and sell the parts for quick cash. But it wasn't just about the money. Carla wanted him to pay for everything he had done. This wasn't just theft, it was revenge. At around 3 a.m. on the morning of June 13, 1983, the trio arrived at Jerry's apartment. Gaining access was easy because Carla had stolen the keys weeks earlier, anticipating the moment she might need them. Doug pressed them about their intent. Had they planned to kill Jerry from the start?
When you went over there and killed them people, did you go there to do that?
Doug went over there, Doug didn't know what I was going to do.
But did you have that in your mind?
Probably shot him if we went over there to do it. Had a gun.
We went over there with the intentions of the case.
Carla and Danny both denied premeditation, insisting that what happened next just happened. But as Carla described it, the hatred inside her had reached a boiling point. Her only thought was to hurt Jerry, to make him suffer. Once inside, their first instinct was to search for valuables to steal. But when Carla and Danny opened the door to the spare bedroom, they found Jerry Dean asleep. Carla, high and erratic, climbed on top of him, tried to pin him down. As Jerry stirred awake, confused and alarmed, he grabbed Carla by the arms to push her off. Without hesitation, Danny picked up the ball-peen hammer and struck Jerry hard on the head. What followed was a descent into pure madness. As Jerry gurgled in agony, struggled for breath, Carla's frustration mounted. The sound infuriated her. In her drug-fueled state, she reached for a pickaxe that was nearby and began swinging it wildly into Jerry's body. Carla admitted that each blow gave her a sexual thrill.
Carla?
Yeah.
Maybe me telling you that was stroke, was that you, did you? Did you really?
Oh, hell yeah.
As Jerry clung to life, Danny stepped in and delivered a final blow, ending the brutal assault. But for Carla, it wasn't over. As Danny left the room, Carla noticed movement. There was someone else in the bed. Deborah Thornton was now wide awake and terrified. Carla lunged at her, and though the two women struggled briefly, Carla's rage quickly overpowered Deborah. When Danny returned, Carla, consumed by bloodlust, raised the pickaxe and struck Deborah repeatedly. Danny pushed Carla aside. But Deborah was still moving, so Danny delivered the fatal blow, driving the pickaxe deep into her chest, piercing her heart. After committing the murders, the trio didn't flee in a panic. Instead, they lingered in the apartment, gathering items to steal. Once back home, they celebrated their crime. Carla, in particular, seemed proud, boasting about the murders and even giving the victim's wallet to her sister as a birthday gift. Danny casually disposed of Jerry's stolen motorcycle parts by dumping them in the Brazos River. When the evening news reported the bodies, both Carla and Danny laughed, proudly calling themselves the Pickaxe Murderers. But their celebration would be short-lived. As Carla and Danny recounted this to Doug, every word was more chilling than the last. Their confessions painted a vivid, horrifying picture of that night. Carla had not just killed Jerry and Deborah, she had relished it. That was all the investigators needed. The truth, now fully exposed, was more terrifying than they had imagined. It was time to bring Carla Faye Tucker and Danny Garrett to justice for the savage murders they had committed. As Doug Garrett left Carla Faye Tucker's house, investigators made their move. Danny Garrett was arrested by his friend, Detective Mosier. At the same time, armed officers stormed Carla's house, erupting the scene into chaos. Carla was swiftly taken into custody. Every friend present in the house, including James Librand, was rounded up and brought in for questioning. At the police station, the friends began spilling everything they knew. Their stories were eerily consistent. Carla's deep-seated hatred for Jerry Dean had been no secret. But Carla and Danny remained tight-lipped, refusing to cooperate. Carla claimed she was too high on drugs to remember anything about the night of the murders. On the evening of July 20, 1983, Carla Faye Tucker and Danny Garrett were officially arrested and charged with capital murder of Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton. Both were held at the Harris County Jail without bail, their futures hanging by a thread. In September 1983, the two faced separate trials for the horrific murders. Carla was initially charged with both murders, but later, she was prosecuted only for Jerry Dean's murder. Danny was charged with Deborah Thornton's murder. Both claimed innocence as they awaited trial. In April 1984, Carla went to trial for the savage murder of Jerry Dean. She pleaded not guilty, but promised that she would tell the whole truth. On the stand, she admitted to being heavily under the influence of drugs and alcohol on the night of the killings. Carla's defense team tried to argue that she was temporarily insane and not fully aware of her actions. The crime was not premeditated, just a robbery that spiraled out of control. To support this claim, they presented testimony from a famous psychiatrist. Surprisingly, even some witnesses brought in by the prosecution acknowledged this, agreeing that Carla and Danny were too intoxicated that night. However, the prosecution painted a very different picture. They emphasized the sheer brutality of the murders and Carla's own admission that she had experienced a sense of pleasure from the violence. Witnesses also testified that Carla had openly bragged about the killings in the days following the crime. To Carla's surprise, James Librand, who witnessed the murders firsthand, came forward and testified against her. The trial reached its climax when the prosecution played their secret recordings.
What did they say about that? Same fingerprints?
No, I seen it in the picture, had tape on it. I didn't know if they'd stick the tape or not.
They won't stick the red gloves on.
They can't link nothing with nothing? No fingerprints,
Unless somebody freaks out.
Carla remained completely silent as the jury listened to the taped confessions. Her detailed description of experiencing sexual pleasure while killing Jerry Dean was particularly damning, painting a picture of someone who had taken a perverse joy in the violence. Before the judge could render her final sentence, Carla was given one last chance to speak on her own behalf. For nearly 5 hours, she recounted the chaotic life she had once led, a life consumed by addiction, anger, and recklessness. She expressed remorse, but it was too late for redemption in the eyes of the court. Despite her emotional and impassioned plea, the judge handed down the ultimate punishment, death by lethal injection. Karla Faye Tucker was now the first woman to be sentenced to death row in Texas since the Civil War. She was left to face her fate in Gatesville Prison. A few months later, in October 1984, Danny Garrett's trial began. While Danny was also involved in the killing of Jerry Dean, he faced charges specifically for the brutal murder of Deborah. Danny's defense team attempted to shift some blames onto Karla, arguing that Danny had been under her influence and that his actions were part of a drug-fueled haze. They claimed Danny was not the leader in the killings and that his violent behavior was out of character. They also pointed to Danny's traumatic experiences in Vietnam, suggesting his PTSD had played a role in his violent outburst. However, the jury was not convinced. The gruesome nature of the crime, coupled with the evidence from Karla's testimony in the recorded confessions, painted a different picture. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Danny Garrett guilty of capital murder. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection. It was a final blow, marking the last time Karla and Danny would ever see each other. He was transferred to a detention facility outside of Huntsville, Texas. In that same year, 1984, James Librand was charged with burglary and accessory to murder, as his role was mainly assisting in the robbery and being present at the crime scene. During Karla's trial, James became a state's witness, agreeing to testify against Karla and Danny. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison but only served a small portion of that time. After spending just 3 years and 4 months behind bars, James was released, likely due to the deal he struck with prosecutors. While waiting for her last trial, Karla began to sober up, years of drug and alcohol abuse finally loosening their grip on her. She began to reflect on her past and the choices that had led her to this point. Over time, Karla experienced what many would describe as a profound spiritual transformation. Karla started reading books from the jail library and she found the Bible. For the first time in her life, her eyes were opened. She decided to change the course of her life. Karla started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and started her own Bible study group within the prison. Eventually, she started her own ministry, counseling other inmates and spreading the message of forgiveness and redemption. Karla had become a born-again Christian.
As you said, there's a freedom in it. When I was forgiven and I experienced that forgiveness, it freed me up inside to soar. You know, it freed me up inside to go higher and to go deeper with the Lord. But when we're holding unforgiveness, we're blocking communication and intimacy with the Lord in our own lives, and bitterness can start to take root in us. Well, when God forgave me, I think He used that forgiveness and that love to reach down inside of me and take every root of evil, every root of horror that was in me, and literally pull it up and get rid of it and go back in me and fill up with His love.
Karla Faye Tucker's newfound faith and transformation behind bars couldn't erase the brutal reality of her crimes. Justice still needed to be served and death penalty was the answer. Between 1984 and 1992, Karla's legal team fought tirelessly, filing appeals and motions for a retrial, but each one was denied. Yet during this period, something remarkable happened. Karla began to gain a legion of supporters. While the legal system still viewed her as a murderer, many others saw her as a symbol of transformation and redemption. Over time, Karla's story resonated with people far beyond the prison walls. Initially, Carla had come to terms with her fate, accepting that she would one day die by lethal injection. But when Danny Garrett passed away in 1993 from liver disease, something inside her shifted. Spurred by his death, she resolved to fight for her life. Around the same time, Carla also found love behind bars. In 1995, she married Dana Lane Brown, a minister, and this new chapter of her life only strengthened her determination. In one press conference, Dana Lane Brown begged for a change.
Even though she cried out for forgiveness, God gave her just what she needed, and that was love. But we feel like the system and the process has got to be changed.
In June 1997, Carla made an impassioned appeal to have her death sentence commuted to life in prison. Her case garnered international attention, drawing support from an array of influential figures. Among her most vocal supporters were Pope John Paul II, Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Newt Gingrich, and televangelist Pat Robertson. In an astonishing twist, even family members of her victims spoke out on her behalf. Ronald Carlson, the brother of Deborah Thornton, and Peggy Kurtz, Jerry Dean's sister, both testified that they believed Carla's sentence should be reduced. They had seen firsthand the profound transformation she had undergone during her time in prison. Even the warden of Huntsville Prison acknowledged her remarkable change, describing Carla as a model inmate who had dedicated herself to her faith and the betterment of others.
That lady right there come in there with her dignity. She know what she did wrong, but she was saved. I seen that in that person.
In 1997, Carla's legal team filed a clemency petition with the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles, asking them to recommend that her sentence be commuted to life in prison. Thousands of letters poured in from around the world, urging Texas Governor George W. Bush to show mercy.
In our state of Texas, the Pardons and Parole Board decides whether someone gets executed or not. They can make a recommendation to me, and I can accept their recommendation.
On January 28, 1998, the Texas Prison Board of Pardons and Paroles denied Carla Faye Tucker's request for clemency. With time running out, Carla penned a heartfelt letter to George W. Bush, hoping her words could sway the governor's heart. But as the clock ticked closer to her execution, Carla's hopes were dashed once again. Just hours before she was scheduled to die, Governor Bush refused her final 11th hour appeal to block the execution. The decision sealed her fate.
The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay. May God bless Carla Faye Tucker, and God bless her victims and their families.
On February 2, 1998, in her final moments, Carla made a humble request for her last meal: a peach, a banana, and a garden salad with ranch dressing. The simplicity of her choice stood in stark contrast to the media frenzy surrounding her. News channels from across the country documented every second of her final hours, capturing the culmination of one of the most high-profile death row cases in recent history.
No, I'm not. I'm not afraid of dying. I mean, I know where I'm going. I know that Jesus has already gone to prepare a place for me. The world, per se, may not believe I deserve forgiveness, but God says He's forgiven me because I did repent, and I turned away from what I did, and I gave my life to Him.
On February 3, 1998, Carla Faye Tucker was led to the execution chamber, her steps measured and deliberate as she faced the inevitable. In her final moments, she made a poignant request that her sister Carrie, her husband Dana, close friend Jackie Onken, and Ronald Carlson, the brother of her victim, be present to witness her last breath. It was a testament to the unlikely bonds she had formed in her years of redemption. At 6:45 p.m., just 8 minutes after the lethal injection was administered, Karla Faye Tucker was pronounced dead. With her death, she became the first woman to be executed in Texas in 135 years and the first since the reinstatement of capital punishment in the United States. As news of her death spread, voices from across the world rose in both grief and outrage. Some mourned the loss of a reformed soul, while others spoke in favor of justice served.
It is a tear in the fabric of society when a murder happens. The death penalty is the thread and needle to sew it back together again.
As she was dying, I did ask God to have mercy on her soul. It was the right thing to do. And her dying was also the right thing to do.
My name is Ronald Carlson. I'm the brother of the deceased Deborah Thornton. And I just want you folks to know that what I witnessed here today was a pure atrocity. The state of Texas, how they destroyed a very important person. They took the life of Karla Faye Tucker today, but I want you to know they only killed her body. Her spirit still lives on. It will continue through all of us. Jesus Christ has taken her up to be in heaven with her, and her spirit will continue.
Karla Faye Tucker was laid to rest at Forest Park Lawndale Cemetery in Houston, but even in death, her story continued to stir controversy. After her execution, Governor George W. Bush faced a wave of criticism, with accusations that he had shown a lack of empathy during her final appeals. In response to the backlash, Bush issued a statement, saying that while he had forgiven Karla for her crimes, she still had to face justice for the brutal taking of 2 lives. His decision to deny clemency became one of the most debated moments of his governorship. For Richard Allen, captain of the Death House team, executing Karla led him to an emotional breakdown, a moment that shattered his once staunch belief in capital punishment. Allen resigned from his position in the Texas prison system soon after. He admitted that no one has the right to take another life, even if it's the law. Karla's life and tragic end soon became the subject of several film adaptations, while her case continues to raise difficult questions. Can someone truly change after committing such a heinous crime? Should a person's transformation in prison be enough to spare them from execution? And what role, if any, should forgiveness play in the justice system? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found today's video compelling, don't forget to subscribe, like and share. And if there's a case you'd like us to cover in the future, leave us a message. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.